Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our November Town Hall. It's nice to be back live with you in our virtual setting here. As of now, we have more than 400 of you registered, so thank you for joining us. As we say every month, as long as you continue to find value in these events, we'll continue to host them. My name is Chris Valentine. I'll be your moderator for today's Town Hall again. Those of you who participated in these town halls over the past year will recognize the format remains the same. We're going to open up in just a minute with Chancellor Reddy with a campus update. Then we'll hear from Benek Altayli, Director of Mental Health Services, who has a presentation on the positive impact we can make towards morale in our respective areas. Then we'll open up with a Q&A from our panelists. Joining Chancellor Reddy will be Vice Chancellor of Administration and Finance, Chuck Litchfield, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Carlos Garcia, our Interim Provost, Kelly Klebe, Harper Johnson, our Assistant Vice Chancellor of Technology and Human Resources, and Billy Joe Baptiste, our Director of Health Services, will join us as well. We have a handful of pre-submitted questions we'll start with just after the Chancellor and Benek's presentation, and then we'll transition to your live questions. If you're tuned in this afternoon and have a question for the panel, we encourage you to submit your questions with the link at the bottom of your screen. We'll address as many of them in the time it permits. As always, we'll include a summary of answers to frequently asked questions in this week's communique. And as always, I ask for your patience with any technology challenges. We have a team working in the background to get us back online as quickly as possible, so we appreciate your patience. So we'll cross our fingers and hope all goes well today. With that, I'd like to introduce Chancellor Venkat Reddy to share some remarks. Chancellor?
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon. It's hard to believe we're just 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving. I hope you're planning to enjoy time with your friends and family over the holiday. So here are a few updates I would like to share with you from our campus. First, I have a very important request for all of you. If you have not completed the campus workplace and culture survey, please take 10 minutes after this town hall to submit it. Faculty and staff, please encourage students you work with to do the same. In fact, we have extended the deadline to November 30th to give you extra time to complete it. Without your feedback, it's going to be hard to make some good decisions for the campus as we continue to enhance our campus culture. In other important news, I hope you saw last week's memos about the compensation increase for eligible faculty and university staff. The President, fellow chancellors, and I recognize the hard work and commitment you have shown over the past year to help our students succeed. Even though we didn't meet the revenue thresholds that have triggered automatic compensation increases, we felt it was important that we find a way to provide those increases. These raises are made possible through one-time funds and an ongoing decrease in charges assessed to the campuses by the system administration. The compensation plan includes a 3% base building salary increase and a one-time payment equal to 1% of an employee's annual salary. This applies to all eligible faculty and university staff, except for those with a performance rating of 2 or below on their most recent performance review. All employees who started prior to September 1st, 2021 will be eligible for this increase. The 3% base building salary increase will be applied across the board effective January 1st. The 1% one-time payment will be made in the January 2022 paychecks. I'm very grateful to the regions for their wholehearted support and approval of these raises. In more good news, we're also preparing to move into the holiday season. As in previous years, campus will close during the last week of December. I'm excited to share that Governor Polis has authorized 12 hours of leave as this year's governor's holidays, and I decided to match with another 12 hours of Chancellor's administrative leave. This will allow UCCS employees to enjoy an extended time with family and friends without affecting their leave balance. Campus will close starting Friday, December 24th, except for essential services. Normal operations will resume on Monday, January 3rd, 2022. So please watch your email for more information later this week. In terms of COVID-19, I want to give a huge shout out to campus. We're approaching commencement and we have not experienced a single COVID-19 case transmitted in a classroom. This is a testament to you. Thank you for continuing to wear your face coverings indoors, monitoring symptoms, and keeping the entire campus community safe. We could not do it without you. Now, we're doing well according to most of our metrics. Our vaccination attestation rate is 85% for students and 91% for faculty and staff. The proportion of cases on campus remains 60% lower than El Paso County. As expected, after the Halloween weekend, we are seeing an increase in COVID-19 cases in our wellness center. We anticipate the numbers to increase a little more by the end of the week. We are closely monitoring the situation, but know that we are not at our threshold. Our campus rate remains significantly lower than the overall county rate. As we have shared in our Friday COVID-19 updates, our trigger point for taking more stringent actions will be when our campus per capita infection rate exceeds those of our broader community. And the good news is we're not even close, and we hope to remain that way. At this point, we're sticking it to our goal to offer in-person learning through the end of the fall semester. With cold weather and everyone spending more time indoors, please follow the health and safety measures we have in place. We're also hearing of hospital beds filling up in our community. So we should be extra careful and take additional precautions to keep ourselves and others safe. We're also evaluating the implications of the federal contractor vaccination mandate, including the recent announcement extending the deadline for compliance into January of 2022. We're working closely with the system and fellow campuses in determining how we'll move forward. So please stay tuned on that. In terms of searches, I hope you're able to engage with the Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion candidates when they visited our campus. We also have a provost candidate visits beginning this week. We'll have 4 provost visits lasting through November 19th. This is a critical position for our campus. I sincerely hope you will take some time to engage with the finalists, either in person or during the 2 remote options available for each candidate. Your participation and feedback are the most important part of this process. You can find the times and dates of each visit on Communique, and we'll be sending out each candidate's information via email as well. As you know, we're also searching for the next president of the University of Colorado system. The Board of Regents have been busy conducting listening sessions across the system, including the session they held yesterday here at UCCS. The Regents anticipate naming the Presidential Search Committee during the November 18th meeting. They will draft and finalize the position description at their December board meeting. In mid-December, they will hold the first meeting of the search committee and formally begin the recruiting process. They anticipate naming the new president during the March 2022 Board of Regents meeting. Since we are speaking about timelines, I also want to highlight a change we're making to employee performance evaluation cycles. By the way, this is a system-wide, not just our campus. This will affect all staff members and all 12-month faculty. We're shifting most performance cycles to align performance reviews more closely with merit reviews. This will also shorten the gap between performance reviews and merit increases to within 6 months. You can find more details on Communique or using the link on the screen. In terms of enrollments and budgets, now it's very early to be looking at enrollment for spring semester, but I thought you might appreciate a look at our spring enrollments. Cumulative registration for spring 2022 is up 9.1% compared to this point last year. So we are on a good track so far. Next, on the critical topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. First, I want to share with you the racially divisive stickers placed on our campus a few weeks ago. UCCS police are still investigating the stickers' origins. I'm hopeful we'll know more soon. In the meantime, let me reaffirm my earlier message to the campus. The free expression of thoughts and ideas is central to our mission as a university. But deliberate hateful speech meant to create fear and division has no place on our campus. Next, I have an update on the Tree of Peace planted on our campus. We held several meetings with the indigenous campus community members as well as our broader community members throughout this year. With their input, we have found a solution that allows us to continue plans to build the annex to our engineering building while including the Tree of Peace into the architectural designs. You will be very pleased when you see that. We are in a good place and are set to move forward with the building plans somewhere near the end of spring 2022. The Future of Work Task Force is also in the process of completing its report and recommendations by next week. The Cabinet and I are looking forward to reviewing these proposals. I can't say thank you enough for the work that these 18 faculty, staff, and students have put into this project over the past 6 months. While I have not seen the recommendations yet, I know that we are looking at a future that will offer more flexibility in the workplace. Finally, we have some very good news. This October, we celebrate the grand opening of the Tiro Prize Career and Innovation Center. We wanted to envision the career center of the future, and we have created a beautiful, functional space right at the heart of our campus. I'm thrilled about what it means for our students and alumni. So I hope you'll find time to visit the new career center located on the ground floor of the University Center. And don't forget to see the game room right next to it. Thank you for listening to these updates from across the campus. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our special guest for this month's town hall, Benek Altayli, Director of Mental Health Services. Benek will share a presentation for us, tips on how we can enhance the morale of our work area. Please join me in welcoming Benek.
Thank you, Chancellor. Today I want to talk a little bit about what makes our pandemic environment so stressful and what we can do specifically to be able to boost resilience and morale in our workplaces. At the very end of the presentation, I'm going to share some resources. Please have your pens and paper ready if you wanted to take down some phone numbers that I'm going to share with you as resources we can use that are available to us for the entire UCCS campus community. So what makes a stressful environment stressful? There are some very common characteristics that makes the environments we live in and work in stressful, uncontrollable, a sense of having things be uncontrollable, negative emotional salience, ambiguous situations, and situations that are unpredictable, perceived as unpredictable, are the common factors that make our spaces stressful. When you think about it, our pandemic environments at a global level, at a community level, at our campus level, hit all of these common characteristics. So it's no wonder that we have been feeling like we are tried in our workspaces. Resilience is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, and significant sources of stress. And these sources of stress may be family and relationship problems, serious health problems, workplace stressors, and financial stressors. We are going to focus our suggestions, our discussion to the workplace stressors today. Perhaps the most important principle to focus on in talking about this topic is that resilience should not be an individual responsibility. It should be a collective organizational responsibility in how we conduct our business, how we relate to one another in the workplace. Because when we look at research outcomes, resilience is found to be more about the team bonds than the team members' psychological makeup or coping styles as individuals. At an organizational level, what can we do specifically to boost and maintain resilience and morale? Here are some specific examples and specific suggestions we can consider and think about. And before I go to the suggestions, I want to highlight that when invited, I do go to individual departments and do a workshop or a presentation to get more into what we can do and how to implement some of these suggestions in our specific departments. So I would be very happy to do that with you as well. You can contact me via email or call me at my office to help coordinate for that. So the specific suggestions are really straightforward. I want to start out with saying we need to plan for appropriate workloads and flexible performance evaluations. Although the job description of each individual on campus stayed the same, managing a pandemic in our community, doing our tasks in the pandemic context has increased our workloads, and being mindful of that and planning for this increased workload is really important. Creating equitable support and service access opportunities to all UCCS community members is also important. There is nothing more frustrating, discouraging than announcing services that are not accessible for some people on campus for various reasons. So whenever we are designing service, providing support, it's really important to think about who the audience is and to make sure that they have equitable access. Having supervisors and managers be easily accessible is another specific recommendation I want to make. In a lot of my discussions with my colleagues on campus, one theme that comes up regularly is it's not so much what I have to go through, it's that I feel alone and isolated in it, is the stressor that is emphasized over and over. Another important suggestion is having supervisors and managers provide clear, detailed, accurate, and consistent communication to the team on an ongoing basis, having information about what's happening, reasoning for decisions that are made, gives us all a sense of mastery and control, which is aiding in one of the factors that make our workplace stressful. Creating buddy or mentorship structures in addition to teaming up experienced team members with less experienced ones in projects helps us work closer together and increases communication and provides a sense of support for all of us. Flexibility and support for individuals who receive professional help or treatment when needed is extremely important. Our supervisors at the Wellness Center said you can have an extra 30 minutes 3 times a week to do self-care of your choosing. So they were very flexible. And I know that some of us use that time to be able to go and do counseling for ourselves, to be able to do self-care, that part of the self-care package that we're trying to attend to. So creating opportunities and having our colleagues have access to treatment when needed is really important. And finally, I want to also give a heads up that we need to recognize that when the pandemic is over and when things get back to quote unquote normal, this will be yet another transition and adjustment period, and it will require several similar levels of support and adjustment. It will be, any change is stressful, and even positive change will create stressors. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of our resources on campus that we have access to, that was offered to us, that we have. Some of them have been long-term resources and some of them are brand new. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we were granted access. So here is where you might need your pen and paper to take notes. So I talked about how to be supportive of each other and how to be mindful of where each other are operating and what each other are going through at this time. The GRIT program that you've heard before from Dr. Chip Benek is a program that I want to highlight in that context. You can have access to the GRIT training that teaches us how to listen, effectively listen, and be supportive of each other, especially in higher education settings, very specifically designed for us in our setting. You can access that training at grit.uccs.edu. Again, it's grit.uccs.edu. Silver Cloud is another service that is online, and it's kind of a self-help program. Nobody needs to know that you have access to it, or you can follow it with your colleagues if that's what is most effective and comfortable for you. Silver Cloud has a step-by-step self-help program that you can follow, and it also provides online access to some coaches on some topics that you might need an interactive process to get the best out of the program. And Silver Cloud can be accessed at uccs.silvercloudhealth, all in one word, .com. And if you put a /sign up at the end of that, then you land at the signing up page, and anybody with a uccs.edu email address can have access and benefit from this incredible resource. If clinical services are necessary, I want to announce today that last week our case manager started work. She is open for business now. What our case manager does is it provides consultation and support for establishing service for the entire UCCS community. That includes students, staff, and faculty. For students, of course, you know, Wellness Center has health and mental health services in addition to chiropractor, massage therapy, and dietetic services. For staff and faculty, for counseling needs, we have, I think a lot of us know, a long-term resource, state employee assistance program. It can be reached at 1-800-821-8144. 54. It provides 6 free sessions to all state employees. In addition to that, to meet the demands and make sure that our staff and faculty are taken care of, free of charge primary care clinic at the Lane Center has contracted with 2 counselors that are there to provide us with services, counseling services. Again, it's free of charge, and they can be reached at 719-255-8001, primary care clinic at the Lane Center. Also, Veterans Health and Trauma Clinic at the Lane Center has both trauma-specific counseling services for our staff and faculty, in addition to, and students. Veterans Health and Trauma Clinic also serves students. They also have created and are offering a whole list of resiliency building programs that they have developed and implemented since the beginning of the pandemic, and they can be reached for more information or making appointments at 719-255-8003. Finally, I want to repeat, if you want to discuss any of what I have talked about today in more detail or coordinate a presentation or a workshop on resiliency in workplaces, please don't hesitate to contact me. My email address is Z as in zebra, altayli@uccs.edu. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Chris?
Benek, thank you so much for that presentation. You shared a lot of great information over the last few minutes, and I appreciate you sharing phone numbers and email addresses as a resource for all of us. So thank you so much for that. So we're now about 1:56, so we're going to transition to our Q&A with our panel. So introducing our panel one more time, joining Chancellor Reddy on our panel this afternoon is our Vice Chancellor of Administration and Finance, Chuck Litchfield, our Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Carlos Garcia, Interim Provost, Kelly Klebe, Harper Johnson, our Assistant Vice Chancellor of Technology and Human Resources, Billy Joe Baptiste, our Director of Health Services, and Benek will stay with us, our Director of Mental Health, in case you have a question about her presentation. So we have about 4 questions to start with. So Chancellor, the first question is for you. Knowing what you know today, or if you have your crystal ball handle, what do you expect for campus to look like this spring related to work? The hybrid and flexible work schedule is going to remain for the future. So some thoughts around what you're expecting a spring semester to look like related to work.
So Chris, as we know, we are learning every day when you look at the workplace, and every organization is learning as well. And we made a conscious decision that we're going to evaluate the work during the fall semester. And we really didn't anticipate how things are going to change. For example, last week, the cases were pretty low. This week, hospitals are full, the cases are going up. So it's really something that we're going to be very thoughtful as we move forward. And Vice Chancellor Garcia is heading up the Future of Work Task Force. We're going to look at those results as well. But the way I see things right now is our best bet is to continue to be flexible, just like we have done in the fall semester. So you'll see that flexibility continue. But in the meantime, what we'll be doing, and I was sharing this with the cabinet this morning, is to collect more data from supervisors and their direct reports to see how are things working out. Are we serving our campus the best way possible, even as we serve remote or hybrid or on campus? So really evaluating that carefully will lead to some changes in those units. If we are delivering the results that we need to deliver for our faculty, staff, and students, and for our community, I think you continue that piece. If we need to shift direction in certain units, we would. So I would say it's not campus as a whole, but I think we're going to evaluate at a unit level to see that we are providing the services we are supposed to. So summarizing it, I think I anticipate that the flexibility will continue.
Great. Thanks, Chancellor. Changing topics. So, Chuck Litchfield, a question for you. Our sustainability program. So, can you talk a little bit about kind of the future of the sustainability program? I know it's been a focus of campus for a while, but kind of thoughts on what the future of that looks like. We had a couple of questions related to sustainability. So, if you can give us a quick summary there.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think one of the things I would say about sustainability on campus in the last 18 months is it's hard for it to have been as visible as it was in previous years, simply because we were not as visible on campus in the last 18 months. I also want to give a shout out to Kimberly Reeves, who was most recently selected as the UCCS Employee of the Quarter. That selection was reflective of the idea that she has really carried the banner for sustainability over the last couple of years and has really kept a lot of the key components of our program intact. It is true that during the last 18 months for COVID, we have kept the Director of Sustainability position open. It was open at the beginning of COVID, and we took the salary savings from it as a part of our necessary budget withholdings in order to cover our budget shortfalls. But despite that, Kimberly and a group of folks that are dedicated to sustainability on the campus began the sustainability strategic planning process as a complement to the campus's strategic plan and our upcoming facilities master plan review. Also, at the system level, we've had the system strategic plan focusing on sustainability and deferred maintenance. And so the campus leadership worked with the system to come up with goals that we intend to achieve over the next 5 years that we think will be really impactful to the sustainability effort. And those include goals with regard to energy savings and reduction of greenhouse gases. The campus will invest an additional $5 million over the next 5 years in those efforts. Kent Marsh is also currently preparing the job description with faculty and staff input for filling the Director of Sustainability position. We look forward to having a new person in that position before the end of the academic year.
Great summary. Thanks for updating that on how that department is growing and getting up to speed there. Next question is for the Chancellor. Chancellor, this question is fairly specific, but I think it's an important one. So hear your thoughts on this. The question is, what is being done for DEI to help offset the impacts of COVID on our BIPOC and women students, staff, faculty?
So throughout the pandemic, we've been concerned with the impacts of on all campus community members about what the pandemic could have affected. So as you know, our goal is access and affordability. So we really targeted the most vulnerable populations have access. So those who needed a computer, broadband access, were the campus's first priority, so that students can continue to learn during this time when we are really doing different formats of learning. So we address that. We also address the mental health issues. We put more resources in supporting the population that's struggling with that, and created more assistance, just like Benek just shared. When we found out there was 75 people on the wait list for mental health services, we put in resources to bring in 2 more counselors or psychologists to help with that. So we are trying to be very targeted in our support where it's needed. There are also some opportunities for student groups to gather based on affinity groups previously formed through Mosaic with the support from the DEI office. And we are also seeing that the faculty and staff have pre-established groups that are addressing these concerns and bringing those to our attention as well, like the FMAC, the Staff Pride, the Women's Committee, and so on. I'm really hopeful that when we do bring in a new Vice Chancellor for DEI, we'll collectively start addressing the direct impacts of the last 2 years on our diverse community and make sure that we prioritize how we can help the folks that are affected by this. So I expect more resources to be put into supporting the folks that are affected by the pandemic.
Wow, thanks, Chancellor. That's a lot of work going on there. I appreciate that update. So sorry we're playing ping pong between Chancellor and Chuck, but Chuck, next question comes back to you. This one's about pay. So the question is, will there be a way for faculty to earn back what may have been, what gains may have been lost with the pay freezes over the last year or so? Of course, they understand that it depends on enrollment and budgets, but thoughts on how we recover from the financially for the last couple of years?
So Chris, you kind of took away my two bullets, right? So I'll go ahead and pass by the idea of enrollment and budget, and let's talk specifically about how merit pay raises have been going. First of all, I think this question may have been posed before the Chancellor's announcement of the base increase that will be coming in January. And as the Chancellor noted, that is something that I think will be welcomed by both faculty and staff. Secondly, I want to say that the idea of base building or merit pay raises is built into region policy with regard to how compensation is managed and how performance management is also dealt with. And it is the expectation of the regions that on a yearly basis, there will be a review and a consideration for merit pay raises. So we haven't walked away from that. The COVID did cause us to make some different choices about that, but we do expect to report that and make recommendations to the regions on an annual basis. We also recognize that base building and particularly merit pay raises are an opportunity to take care of our people and to reward their contributions to our mission. And so we will continue to recognize that as an important factor in what it means to retain our employees. Lastly, I'll say that when we talk about earn back and we talk about what happens when we've not done a pay raise, people really begin to become concerned about whether the university is actually paying market equitable rates and whether we are competitive in the marketplace, particularly for our journeymen or our middle professionals. And so one of the things that HR has done is they have come up or have introduced a new look at the classification structure and also a new means by which we will do compensation analysis. And that impacts both faculty and staff. And we will be applying that on an annual basis in an effort to try and continue to make the campus relevant in the marketplace so that we can hire the best people and we can keep the best people.
That's great. Thanks, Chuck. Appreciate that update there. So it's time now to transition into our live questions. So a number of you have submitted questions through the link there at the bottom of your screen. We have about 25 minutes or so, 24 minutes to go here. So if you do have a question, it looks like we have plenty of time to get through a number of these. So I encourage you still to go ahead and submit a question, and we'll do our best to get to as many of them as we can. So the first question is going to be for Provost Kelly Klebe. The Chancellor mentioned in his remarks the future forums are coming up the next few weeks with our provost candidate. But this is a very insightful question for you. It says, as we look ahead to a new person as provost, what do you see as the most important lesson you'll share with them that you've learned in your time as interim? So it's an interesting question, almost like an interview question, job interview. So what would you share with them?
Thanks, Chris. I would share with them just what a great place UCCS is to work and the dynamics of our faculty and our staff and our students working together to provide excellent experiences for students. So that's the positive, right? I guess the lesson I've learned, if I get to maybe what the question was asking, is what have I learned while I'm in this role, in this position? And that's to, be very intentional to think about what are their goals and what are the campus goals to move our academic mission forward in our research and our student experience, and to make sure that they bring that up in cabinet, because the cabinet has, everybody who has slightly different interests, but everybody is actually here to support students and faculty to meet our mission. And I think I probably would have always said that all the time, but it's just a little bit more realistic and working with people week to week on what that looks like, but also the intentionality that has to be there to make sure you don't forget what you're working for.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. Chuck, we're coming back to you. You wear many hats. This one's a COVID vaccine related question here. So the question is simply COVID vaccines are being required by other campuses, but not here at UCCS. Can you talk briefly about the requiring vaccine versus our attestation process? And we seem to address this regularly, but I like we can talk about it enough. There still have questions about it. And so for staff and faculty, being required for vaccines, as well as the question is, will student employees be required to provide approved vaccines? So thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think the thing that you said last there is probably most salient in this conversation, Chris. When people say that other campuses are requiring vaccines, what other campuses are doing is they're requiring documentation of vaccinations. It is the case that even those campuses that are pretty strict on that requirement are allowing for certain exemptions. And the only difference then between what those campuses are doing and what we've done is we asked our campus to attest to whether they were vaccinated, whether they plan to get vaccinated, or whether they were requesting an exemption. And we haven't taken the step of requesting documentation except in very specific circumstances, like those students that are living in our housing area where they've been asked to provide the documentation. The reasons that we have gone down that path is that we were not interested in trying to make this an issue for individuals, but more to make it an issue for how the community was responding to the necessity of getting vaccinations for our entire population in order to stymie and then eventually eliminate this disease. And we have found that the response of our community through the attestation process has been very effective. And as the chancellor said, our case rate on campus is 60% lower than the county, and our county has been very challenged with regard to COVID cases and has been very challenged with the percentage of the population that has been vaccinated. And what we have found is that our campus community has responded positively to the strong encouragement about vaccinations and the requirement to do the attestation. And as the chancellor has said, depending on the course of the virus, we will always use those tools that are available to us. And if the course of the virus changes dramatically, we would consider implementation of other measures, up to and including requiring vaccination documentation. We haven't needed that. The campus has been doing very well relative to the virus. And we believe the protocols that we have in place, including the attestation and the progress that we have made there, have been very effective.
Chris, if I can add to and emphasize what Chuck just said, if you look at it, even though we didn't require the vaccination proof, right? Vaccinations are required, but we're not looking at the proof itself. I think there's a proxy there, right? In terms of the number of positive cases on the campus. So I think we are still monitoring that. So that could serve as a pretty good proxy in terms of how we are doing as a campus. So I just want people to be aware that there is still a track going on, but in a pretty much of an indirect way. And as I indicated, if our cases exceed per capita the community cases, then we'll get very stringent. We'll be requiring proofs. We may have to consider other stringent measures that we need to take. But so far, we are really grateful to our students, faculty, and staff who've been just phenomenal. And if we just continue on that track, I feel like we may not have to go down that path. But there could be other reasons that might force us, but that would not be this one.
Yeah. Thanks to you both for discussing that again. So I know it's on top of a lot of people's minds. This next one's a comment, not a question. It's for Chancellor and the Regents and everyone. They said a capital thank you. So thank you for the raises and for caring about your team. So I know that's sentiment resonates among many people who are listening today. So thank you. I'll pass that on. Next question is for Harper. Harper, during the Chancellor's presentation, someone was really paying attention to detail here. The question says the email that was sent out on 11/5 says to be eligible for the compensation increase, we had to start prior to July 1. However, during the presentation, Chancellor said the cutoff date was September 1. Can you please clarify that?
Certainly, Chris. Thanks for the question. Yes, good catch. We had an internal conversation to the campus earlier today. The goal is to try to capture as many and reward as many people as we can who gave their all this semester. And so we decided that in order to be equitable to those who started as we were coming back to campus in July and those faculty members whose appointments started in August, that we would move the date so that if you had started on or before September 1st, that we would include you in that. So yes, that was a change, and thank you for bringing that out.
Our audience is paying good attention, so I appreciate catching that little detail. Good job. Next question is for Billy. So we had a number of folks ask about the mask mandate, but I think the right question is, as a clinician, can you please remind us how effective the mask mandate has been? Chancellor talked briefly about this, but as someone who takes care of patients with COVID regularly, can you talk about the masks and how effective they are?
Yes. I think our rates well below the El Paso County rates is a testament to how our masks are working. We're keeping the rate of transmission of COVID on campus very low. And I think that's a testament to the fact that we are requiring masks and people are wearing them in public whenever they're indoors, and it's working for our campus.
Yep, right on. Yeah, you've seen the news stories of the school districts that have mask mandates, have low rates, and those that don't have a higher rate. So I think there's some science behind it. So thanks for sharing that. Harper, we're going to come back to you with another HR question. Says, can you please clarify what is meant by shortening the timeline between evaluations and increases to within 6 months? So Chancellor kind of covered that timeline, but it's kind of complicated there. Can you explain that to us one more time?
Sure, thank you for that. I'll try to explain it. In April, the regents approved a change in how we did our budget cycles so that the budget cycles would be reflective of our enrollment numbers that we don't know until September. Previously, we gave any merit increases on a July 1 date. So our cycle for reviews ended in January, reviews finished in February, and that gave us a 4-month cycle between then and merit increases in July. We basically moved that because the new cycle is that we'll get merit increases in January. And so we moved everything 6 months or 5.5 months so that when the cycle ends in July, supervisors will have when the cycle ends on June 30th, supervisors will have July and August to catch up, to provide those reviews, to give the next year's goals. And that information then will be 4 months to provide the campus to look at the salary increase report and provide those merit increases in January. So we basically shifted the cycle to match the new budget cycle.
I was explaining that to someone the other day, and I had to do my arms and around the calendar cycle to describe the change. So yes, it's complicated. So there is a great memo out there. If you read that a couple times, hopefully it makes sense. Thanks. Chancellor, this question for you. In your remarks, you talked about the AVC for DEI search. The question, can you reiterate what you mentioned there in your remarks about the status of the AVC for DEI search?
So as you know, the candidates have come and then we have collected feedback. The best I could say is I'm in the process of talking to the candidates so that we could finalize a person to join our team. So call it negotiations right now.
All right. Considered in process. Yes, VC, I said the question at AVC, but yeah, the person is the VC, DEI. Thanks for clarifying that. I have a budget question for Chuck. So Chuck, coming back to you on this one, said to all of us, good job with the enrollment team on spring enrollment, the numbers that the Chancellor shared. What will that positively impact our overall budget? So good budget question for you.
Sure, Chris. I don't know if I'm there. I go pop up. So it could. we budget a certain percentage of our spring enrollment as a function of what we expected for fall. And as everyone knows, we were pretty much spot on budget for fall, with our tuition mix being slightly higher due to a slightly higher number of out-of-state students. If that were to continue through the spring, and if the spring enrollment were much better than we normally budget, then it could have a positive impact on the budget. I just want to remind everybody that the numbers that we report with regard to spring enrollment are reflective of this year compared to last year. Last year was a particularly low year for spring because of the issues related to COVID. So we expect positive numbers this year. The numbers would have to be strongly positive in order to continue to raise how we've been doing relative to budget.
Thanks. Next question, I'm going to come to Provost Klebe. So, Kelly, the question is, what should a student do if faculty aren't being flexible with assignments, attendance, et cetera, and are required to quarantine, isolate? So we've talked about this before, kind of the consistency across different faculty members, but what should a student do? What is the next step?
Well, first you should talk with your faculty about it and see what can be done. And if not, you can work your way up through the going to the department chair. You can go to the dean of students and can maybe help mediate in between the faculty and the student. And then if you don't get help that way, you could go to the dean of the college that your class is in. So those are the norm, right? So it's communication, letting people know what the problem is and seeing if you can get some kind of relief there.
Very good, thank you. Harper, next question is for you. This is kind of a blend of your HR and IT hat here. So can you please remind us the campus guidelines for appropriate email sends?
Thanks, Chris, for that. Remind you of the guidelines for the appropriate email what?
Sending appropriate emails. I assume they're referring to the faculty and staff L's usage.
Yeah. So those rules are outlined specifically on the faculty and staff-L website. You actually have to click through them in order to send out a message through those links. I do not know them off the top of my head, but they are conducive to supporting a safe learning and working environment here on the campus. And so I would recommend anybody who has a question about them that they can find them written out and reviewed by legal on that website.
Thanks for that direction. Two questions for Benek. So Benek, back-to-back questions here for you. So first question for you is, how is the campus responding to students' evolving hardships and expectations as flu season approaches, we stay in the pandemic, and mental health cases continue to rise? You just gave us a great presentation here, but can you just hit on a couple of the key points there that how we're supporting our students and doing our best in these times?
Sure. Thank you for that important question. So as Chancellor has mentioned, our leadership has provided us with additional resources for additional staff to address staffing challenges, part of the staffing challenges. We are well aware that the increasing 1 or 2 or 3 clinicians for our campus is not going to resolve the entire staffing problem we're faced with due to incredibly fast increasing demand. So for that, we also have hired a case manager. A case manager can consult with the students who have health insurance can meet with the case manager by contacting the wellness center and be able to find clinicians in the community. Some students need longer term treatment than what we can provide because of the demand levels. We have to get them in and address the most pressing issues and then discharge them. And some students benefit from that, but they need more. And case manager can help with that to find appropriate level of service in the community as well. In addition to that, we are, through the care team, we are diligently working to provide interdisciplinary support for our students. It's not just the mental health crisis that needs addressing. It's support for academics, it's support for living and financial aid, etc. So we're trying really hard to be able to address the issue from all sides that we have any control over.
Thanks, Benek. This one is a little bit outside of your expertise, but I think you're the closest to this one here. So I was talking about mental health services for faculty and staff. You mentioned some resources with the excuse me, in the primary care clinic. But the question is, are they anonymous? Do they go through any type of insurance? And how can faculty and staff trust that they're using these services will be beneficial and not harmful to their career pathways? So I think we're talking about the division between healthcare and your work. Can you just speak briefly?
Yeah. So I can speak to confidentiality. So I can assure you that your health and mental health services that you get from our clinics, community-facing clinics or campus clinics like the Wellness Center, is strictly confidential. It is protected by law. If your information is shared in a clinical setting, if you say something about yourself and it's shared by individuals who you have not explicitly given permission to share, it's breaking the laws. And all individuals who hold a health or mental health provider license know this, and we have systems that protect that information, whether it's a remote service or in-person service. And I can assure you that because you have access to resources that are available to you, our leadership has implemented additional resources. They're encouraging us to make use of our resources that are available to us. And I want to reassure everyone that just because you follow direction and really have access to those resources, there is no predictable, foreseeable harm that can come to your career trajectory. Especially for clinical services, unless you disclose that you are having treatment somewhere, unless you yourself disclose it, there's no way anybody could know about it.
Yeah, thanks, Benek, for sharing that insight. So there's a lot of confusion sometimes in that clinical world. So we're getting close to the end of our time. I have one comment for Harper, and then we'll give Chancellor a minute to wrap this up. So Harper, there is still a lot of confusion about the review cycle, and I know we can't solve it here in the next minute or two here, but do you have any direction where you can point folks if they do have questions, how to learn more and how to find out more about the changes in the review cycle?
Sure, Chris, I know it's complex. We now have different review cycles for university staff, classified staff, 9-month faculty, and 12-month faculty. So if you look on the screen, you could see the communique article. If you still have questions after you read through that specific to your employment status, please reach out to the HR office. So we'll be glad to help walk through your specific case and answer your specific questions.
Thanks for giving some direction there. I appreciate that. So we're about 2 minutes away from the end of our time together. So I'd like to turn it back over to Chancellor Reddy just to share some final closing comments with us. So Chancellor.
Thank you, Chris. I mean, obviously, there are a lot of issues on people's minds, and we'll continue to answer the best we can and continue to work towards creating a transparent culture. So talking about transparent culture, please go and take the CWC survey. I think it's going to be very important to hear your voices to help you and support you in what you're doing. I also would like to thank the President and the Regents for supporting the pay raises for our faculty and university staff. And I hope you have a wonderful time with your family over the Thanksgiving holiday. And hopefully I get to see many of you at the upcoming in-person commencement as well. Again, thank you so much for what you do for our students and for your colleagues. Because of you, we are a better place and a better organization. So thank you very much, and wishing you nothing but the best.